Hello friends. Welcome back to our video. In this video we will discuss the CYRANO movie. This film is about the sacrifice of a dwarf man for the happiness of his loved ones, where he had dedicated his life to this woman. Before we continue the video, don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss our video. Also, like and share this video with all your friends. A girl named Roxanne is dressing for watching a theater show. Her mother tells her to wear the dress that the Duke of Dagich bought for her, but she declines and says she doesn't love him. Her mother wants to match Roxanne with him because he is a duke and rich, but Roxanne still refuses his love. She said she accepted his invitation just to get the free theater ticket. After a few minutes, the Duke Dagich comes to pick her up using a horse-drawn carriage. On his horse-drawn carriage, he asks Roxanne the reason she is not wearing the dress he gave her. While she is on the horse-drawn carriage, there is a man who looks at her and is amazed at her beauty. The man follows her until he enters the theater. While Roxanne is on the stage and singing, they look at each other for a few seconds. Suddenly, a thief is stealing his bag, so the man runs to catch the thief. They seem interested in each other, it can be seen in their eyes. The show is begun. Montfleury, the theater actor, is starting the theater. Everybody was so excited about the show, but suddenly CYRANO yelled and said that he should stop the show because he had just made a lie. Some people disagree with CYRANO, but then he asks for a volunteer to fight with him to save the show. No one comes forward, but when he leaves the stage, a rich man, Valverde, calls him and starts to underestimate him. Valverde makes fun of his small body and asks him to fight. The fight is entertainment for the audience. Very fierce because even though CYRANO has a small body, he fights very well and can balance Valverde. He could even take down Valverde and beat him. Roxanne, who watches the fight, looked worried and sometimes she looked away. In addition, CYRANO managed to incapacitate Valverde but did not kill Valverde. Suddenly Valverde woke up and wanted to attack from behind. CYRANO realized that, and he automatically raised his sword and accidentally stabbed Valverde. After that, Roxanne was on her way home and an old man said CYRANO had gone too far. Roxanne says Valverde insulted her, that's why CYRANO fought back, but she firmly believes it was an accident. It turned out that CYRANO was an old friend of his since he was in his old town. And then Duke Dagich asked him to break off his friendship with CYRANO. On the other hand, CYRANO's friend asks if she is in love with someone or not because she saw something different with him in the theater tonight. At first, he was denying it, but after that, he confesses that he had been in love with Roxanne for a long time. He says that his life purpose is to love him. But he realized that Roxanne was too perfect for him and impossible for him to love her. Her friend tries to persuade her to confess her feelings to Roxanne, but she doesn't listen. Her friend said that Roxanne was worried when she fought with Valverde, but CYRANO still refuses to express her feelings for him. He knew that she would avoid him when he knew her feelings, so he preferred to love her in silence. Suddenly, someone came and said that Roxanne wanted to see him tomorrow. He said that Roxanne asked to meet at a private place and asked him to choose that place. With a thought, he thought of a suitable place and his friend suggested a place called Raganos. He said they would meet at 7. CYRANO was overjoyed to hear that Roxanne wanted to meet him in person, so she returned to her place. On his way, several people suddenly swarmed him and managed to pull him up using a rope. However, he was able to defeat them and return home safely. There, he could see the shadow of a man who seemed to be ordering them to attack him. The next morning, at 6 a.m. he was in Raganos. He deliberately came early because he wanted to prepare everything well. He also created beautiful poems and letters for Roxanne. He made sure everything was fine to welcome Roxanne. When Roxanne came, she tried to act normal, but Roxanne's friend looked uncomfortable there. So CYRANO asked the shop owner to serve food to his friend. Roxanne helped him treat the wound on his hand and said he was proud of his bravery. CYRANO asked him to make a confession, but he was too embarrassed to say so. And then Roxanne tries to slowly explain that in the last theater she fell in love with someone, but the man didn't know it. He was confused about whether it was really love or just an illusion, and then CYRANO asked him to explain who the man was. He said that she was very beautiful, charming, smart-looking, mysterious, and rare. CYRANO thought that he was talking about her, so he said that he wanted to make a confession too. He says to wait till he finishes his confession. And then he said that he never spoke to her, really never spoke to her. After hearing that, CYRANO realized that she wasn't the one he meant. She looked very disappointed but still smiled at him. He asked CYRANO to look after him as he was also a soldier in the same regiment as CYRANO. He told CYRANO that his name was Christian and he asked him to ask Christian to write him a letter. And when he finished, he left from there. In his regiment, Duke Dagich came to CYRANO and asked him to sell his poetry because he loved poetry very much. But CYRANO refused because his poetry was not for sale. And the Duke asked CYRANO to join his army, but he still refused the order. His friend Labert asked him to follow what he said, but CYRANO wouldn't do that. While they were arguing, Christian came and several soldiers challenged him to a fight. He could defeat all the soldiers who came forward. CYRANO, who heard the commotion, came, and then he accepted the invitation to the duel. Christian began to underestimate his body, while CYRANO did not know it was Christian. He asked Christian his name, and when he said his name was Christian, CYRANO immediately hugged him and said he was his brother. Christian, who was still confused, tried to follow him and asked what he meant. He says that he became his brother because of Roxanne. He told Christian that Roxanne was in love with him, and he asked him to write him a letter. Christian is very surprised to know that Roxanne loves him, but he is confused because he can't write a beautiful letter. He knew Roxanne liked something as beautiful as poetry. Then, CYRANO said that she could use her words. Then, Christian asked why he wanted to help him, and then CYRANO said that his words would be in vain if no one said them. He wanted Christian to be the face of his letter, so it was a win-win solution. After that, they started sending letters to each other, but Christian still used CYRANO's letters. Roxanne was so happy to receive the letter she thought was from Christian that she told CYRANO about Christian based on the letters. He said that Christian understood him very well and knew something that made him flutter. He said that Christian and CYRANO were both brilliant, the difference was that Christian was open and passionate. While CYRANO was full of code, wise, and sad, CYRANO was still happy because Roxanne enjoyed reading the letters. After that, CYRANO asks him to create a meeting between him and Christian. Dukagic came to Roxanne's house to say goodbye because she had to go to war. He said that CYRANO would join his army to fight. He tried to persuade him not to take CYRANO with him under the pretext of humiliating CYRANO because he said that his courage and bravery were CYRANO's price. And then he agreed to the plan. On the other hand, Christian was in a hurry because Roxanne wanted to meet him in person. CYRANO asked him to memorize the letter he composed, but Christian said that he would use his own words. He also said that he didn't need CYRANO anymore. And CYRANO let it go to Roxanne. Christian follows Roxanne to a building where the girls gather, her arrival being made her day. He took her upstairs to talk to him face to face. He asked her to say what she wrote in the letter, and then Christian immediately said, "I love you." Roxanne laughed and said that she wanted to hear other words. But he kept saying "I love you" until Roxanne was disappointed in him and left him. After that, he came to CYRANO and told him what happened earlier. He asked CYRANO to help him, and in the end, he helped Christian. CYRANO took him to Roxanne and asked her to call Roxanne. CYRANO whispered what he had to say to Roxanne and asked her not to spoil it again. It went well, and Roxanne believed that it was Christian who spoke. When Roxanne wanted to get closer to him, he reasoned that she felt comfortable talking in secret. After that, he asked about what he wanted, and Christian immediately said that he wanted a kiss. CYRANO tried to hug her, but then Roxanne asked her to come and kiss her. With a heavy heart, CYRANO asked him to go and kiss Roxanne, while CYRANO left the place. On the way, a woman asks CYRANO where is Roxanne's house, and then he takes her to Roxanne. Roxanne got a message from Dukagic that she was on her way home, and when she got there he would marry her. CYRANO read the letter too, and the woman asked what it contained. Roxanne said Dukagic asked her to marry Christian. CYRANO is shocked that he lied, and that would make the Duke angry. While the wedding was taking place, Dukagic was still on his way, and CYRANO stood guard in front of his house. When he arrived, the wedding was over, and it made Dukagic angry. He immediately asked Christian to go with him and join the war. Roxanne is sad and so is Christian because they just got married. But she had to go with Dukagic, so Roxanne asked CYRANO to look after her and not let her starve while she was there. He also asked him to make sure Christian wrote him a letter. CYRANO said that he couldn't confirm it, except for the letter he could confirm that he would write her a letter. While they were guarding the battlefield, CYRANO always wrote and sent letters to Roxanne, but she never knew that the person who always sent her letters was CYRANO, not Christian. He also tries to fulfill his promise to look after Christian and make sure he's not hungry or cold. He even stole some apples for Christian, while Christian was just sleeping and didn't know that CYRANO was always sending letters to Roxanne. On the day of the war, all the soldiers sent letters to their families as the last message, including CYRANO who wrote the letter, but now Christian knows about the letter. Before CYRANO sent the letter, Christian wanted to read the letter first. CYRANO said it wasn't important, but Christian insisted on reading it. Christian saw the tear stains on the letter, and he knew they were CYRANO's tears. CYRANO says it's natural for artists to write letters and cry because they live their work. Christian doesn't believe him, and then he asks if he loves Roxanne or not. He tries to deny, but Christian keeps cornering him. CYRANO admits his feelings implicitly, and Christian understands that CYRANO has been in love with Roxanne for a long time. He wanted to tell Roxanne, but CYRANO forbade him and said that if he stays alive and she dies, don't be surprised by the number of letters he receives, because he writes them every day for Roxanne while they are there. At this moment, Christian realized that he didn't really love her, he loved her soul in the letter, and the person who wrote the letter was CYRANO. That means he loves CYRANO, not him. Christian asks him to confess his feelings and let him choose between Christian and him. CYRANO rejects his plan, but Christian survives and runs out towards the enemy and is shot. CYRANO tries to save Christian, but he can't. Christian asks CYRANO to tell the truth, and then he dies. 3 years later the situation changed. Roxanne lives in the nursing home, and it turns out that CYRANO always comes to visit her every week. The nurses talked about CYRANO never eating every time they fed her, even though her condition was getting worse. CYRANO tried to make a confession letter, but he didn't. Then he comes to meet Roxanne. With his wand he tries to reach Roxanne. Until he had to fall, but then he got up and met Roxanne. Roxanne knew her condition was getting worse until she came too late to meet him. CYRANO tried to rewind the time when they first met, and then he recounted what happened in the war in every detail. And then he charged Roxanne with a promise that she would be allowed to read Christian's last message. When she read the letter, Roxanne realized that she didn't read it, but she remembered the letter. And then he knew that the person who wrote the letter was him, including the voice in the night who spoke to him. It was also him. She asks why he is saying it now. He says maybe it is his last day. Suddenly he fell and Roxanne said that she loved him and wanted him to stay with her, but it was too late because after a few minutes he died. At least he had told all his feelings to Roxanne before he died peacefully. And the movie is over. The pinnacle of love is letting go. This is what CYRANO does. He gave up his love to make Roxanne happy. This film does not have an interesting plot twist, but the storyline of this film is very touching and makes me unable to turn away from this. So, what do you think about this film? Please share your opinion above. See you in the next video.